The USS Endeavour drifted through the vast darkness of space like a metal whale swimming through an ocean of stars. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge watching the viewscreen display a pale blue moon growing larger with each passing minute. The research vessel had been traveling for 3 months to reach this distant system, and Jake felt the familiar mix of excitement and caution that came with exploring unknown worlds. "Captain, we are approaching Kepler 442c, announced Lieutenant Sarah Wells from her position at the navigation console. "All sensors are showing the moon is within the habitable zone and has a stable atmosphere." Jake nodded and turned to his chief science officer, Dr. Lisa Hamilton, who was studying readings from her handheld scanner. Lisa had joined the mission specifically because of her expertise in xenobiology and her ability to understand alien life forms. She was one of the few scientists in the fleet who had actually encountered living extraterrestrial beings during previous missions. "What are you seeing down there, Lisa?" Jake asked as he moved closer to examine her data. "The atmospheric composition looks breathable for humans, but there are some unusual energy readings coming from the surface," Lisa replied while adjusting the scanner settings. "The electromagnetic signatures suggest some form of organized activity, but I cannot determine if it is natural or artificial." Engineer Ryan Torres looked up from his workstation where he had been monitoring the ship's systems during their approach. Ryan was known throughout the fleet for his ability to solve complex technical problems and his talent for understanding how alien technology worked. He had helped establish communication protocols with 4 different species during his career. "Captain, I am detecting what appears to be structures on the lunar surface," Ryan said while pointing to his screen. "The configurations are too regular to be natural formations, but they do not match any known architectural patterns from our database." Jake felt his pulse quicken as he realized they might have discovered evidence of intelligent alien life. First, contact situations were always dangerous and required extreme caution, but they also represented the greatest opportunity for advancing human knowledge and establishing peaceful relationships with other species. "All stop," Jake commanded, and the ship's engines fell silent. "I want a full sensor sweep of the entire moon before we proceed any further. Lisa, I need you to analyze every piece of data we can gather about potential life forms down there." "Commander." Alex Rodriguez stepped forward from his position near the communications array. Alex served as the ship's diplomatic officer and had extensive training in first contact protocols. He had studied every known method of establishing communication with alien species and had helped negotiate several important treaties with newly discovered civilizations. "Captain, if we are dealing with intelligent life forms, we need to follow standard first contact procedures," Alex said in his calm professional voice. "We should maintain a safe distance and attempt to establish communication before making any direct approach to the surface." Jake agreed with Alex's assessment and ordered the ship to hold position while they gathered more information. The bridge crew worked quietly for the next several hours analyzing sensor data and preparing for the possibility of encountering alien intelligence. Dr. Hamilton made the first breakthrough when she detected complex patterns in the electromagnetic readings that suggested organized activity rather than random natural phenomena. The patterns appeared to repeat in regular cycles that indicated some form of purposeful behavior. "Captain, these energy signatures are definitely artificial," Lisa announced while studying her latest readings. "The patterns are too complex and too regular to be natural formations. We are definitely looking at evidence of intelligent life." Ryan had been working on enhancing the visual sensors to get clearer images of the surface structures. When the enhanced pictures appeared on the main view screen, the entire bridge crew fell silent in amazement. The lunar surface was covered with what appeared to be crystalline buildings that glowed with soft blue light. The structures were arranged in geometric patterns that created beautiful designs across the landscape. The buildings seemed to pulse with internal illumination that created waves of light flowing through the alien settlement. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Wells as she stared at the incredible sight. "They are beautiful." Jake had to agree with her assessment. The alien city was unlike anything he had ever seen in his years of space exploration. The crystalline structures seemed to be alive with light and energy that created an almost magical appearance. Ryan, can you determine what is generating that illumination? Jake asked while continuing to study the mesmerizing display. The light appears to be coming from the structures themselves rather than from any external power source, Ryan replied while running detailed scans. It is almost as if the buildings are made from some form of bioluminescent material. Alex had been monitoring communication frequencies, trying to detect any radio signals or other forms of electronic communication from the alien settlement. After several hours of careful listening, he finally detected something unusual. Captain, I am picking up what might be communication signals, but they are unlike anything in our database, Alex reported while adjusting his equipment. The signals appear to be transmitted using light patterns rather than radio waves. Dr. Hamilton immediately became excited by this discovery because it suggested that the aliens might communicate through visual signals rather than audio. This would present unique challenges for establishing first contact, but it also opened up interesting possibilities for developing communication protocols. Lisa, do you think we could establish basic communication using light signals? Jake asked while considering their options. It is definitely possible, Captain, Lisa replied while already beginning to formulate plans. We could use our external lighting systems to create simple patterns and see if we get any response from the surface. Jake made the decision to attempt first contact using the light-based communication method that Dr. Hamilton had suggested. The crew spent the next several hours preparing a series of simple, mathematical sequences that they would transmit using the ship's external lighting array. The moment finally arrived when they began transmitting their first message toward the alien settlement. The ship's lights flashed in carefully timed patterns that represented basic mathematical concepts like counting and simple geometric shapes. The response came almost immediately. The entire alien city began to pulse with complex light patterns that seemed to acknowledge the human transmission. The patterns were far more sophisticated than anything the humans had sent and suggested a highly advanced intelligence. They are responding, Captain, Alex announced with obvious excitement in his voice. The light patterns are definitely intentional, and they appear to be attempting to communicate with us. Jake felt a mixture of pride and responsibility as he realized that humanity was about to make contact with an entirely new form of intelligent life. The crystalline beings on the moon below represented an incredible opportunity for both species to learn from each other and establish a relationship that could benefit everyone involved. Begin preparing a shuttle for surface contact, Jake commanded while continuing to watch the beautiful light show taking place on the lunar surface. We are going to make history today. The shuttle landed on the crystalline surface of the moon with a gentle thud that echoed through the thin atmosphere. Captain Jake Morrison stepped out first, followed by Dr. Lisa Hamilton and Commander Alex Rodriguez. The alien settlement stretched before them like a city made of living glass with buildings that pulsed with soft blue light. The first alien to approach them was clearly different from anything the humans had ever encountered. The being stood nearly 7 feet tall with translucent blue skin that seemed to contain flowing patterns of light. Its body appeared to be made of some form of crystalline material that caught and reflected the illumination from the surrounding buildings. The bioluminescence is incredible, Lisa whispered while taking readings with her scanner. Their entire body structure appears to be designed around light manipulation and storage. The alien being raised one of its 4 arms and began to communicate through rapid patterns of light that flowed across its skin. The display was beautiful but completely incomprehensible to the human visitors, who had no way to understand the complex visual language. Alex stepped forward and activated a portable light projector that he had brought from the ship. He began to flash simple mathematical sequences in the same way they had communicated from orbit. The alien responded immediately with its own light patterns that seemed to acknowledge the basic concepts. After several hours of painstaking work, Alex and Lisa managed to establish basic communication with the alien leader, who identified itself through a complex light pattern that they decided to call Zentara. The name was their best approximation of the flowing light sequence that the being used to identify itself. through careful exchanges of light patterns, the humans learned that the crystalline beings called themselves the Veltar and that they were refugees from a dying planet. Xanthara explained through increasingly complex light displays that their homeworld had become uninhabitable due to the failure of their star system. "They are not originally from this moon," Lisa explained to Jake as she interpreted the alien communication. "They came here searching for a new place to live, but they are having serious problems with survival." The nature of their survival problem became clear as the moon's rotation began to bring darkness to their section of the surface. As the sunlight faded, the Veltar began to show signs of distress that were visible in their dimming bioluminescence and increasingly sluggish movements. Xanthara's light patterns became urgent and desperate as it tried to explain something crucial to the human visitors. The alien leader pointed toward the darkening sky and then to its own body, which was beginning to lose its healthy blue glow. "I think they are trying to tell us that darkness is dangerous for them," Alex said while watching the increasingly frantic light displays. "Look at how their bioluminescence is fading as the sun sets." Lisa quickly set up her medical scanning equipment to monitor the Veltar's biological functions as darkness fell across the lunar surface. What she discovered was alarming and explained the desperate nature of their communication attempts. "Jake, their cellular structure is beginning to change," Lisa reported while studying her readings. "The crystalline matrix that makes up their bodies is starting to become rigid and opaque. It is almost like they are freezing from the inside out." The humans watched in growing alarm as the Veltar settlement began to transform in the darkness. The beautiful flowing light patterns that had illuminated the crystalline buildings began to fade and dim. The aliens themselves moved more slowly and their communication became sluggish and difficult to understand. Jake immediately ordered Ryan Torres to bring portable lighting equipment from the shuttle. The engineer quickly set up powerful LED arrays and directed them toward the struggling aliens. However, the artificial light seemed to have little effect on their deteriorating condition. "The artificial lighting is not helping," Lisa observed while continuing to monitor the Veltar's biological functions. "Their bodies are rejecting the artificial illumination and continuing to undergo the crystallization process." Xanthara managed to communicate through weakening light patterns that the Veltar required natural starlight to maintain their cellular functions. Artificial light sources caused their bodies to reject the illumination and actually accelerated the dangerous freezing process. "They evolved on a planet that never experienced true darkness," Lisa explained after interpreting more of the alien communication. "Their homeworld had multiple moons that provided constant reflected sunlight throughout their night cycles. They have no biological mechanism for surviving in complete darkness." The situation became increasingly desperate as more Veltar began to show signs of the crystallization process. Their translucent blue skin turned opaque white and their movements became stiff and mechanical. The beautiful bioluminescent communication system that defined their species began to fail as their bodies entered a form of emergency hibernation. Jake counted over 30 aliens, showing severe symptoms of the crystallization process. Their bodies were becoming rigid and statue-like as the cellular structure changed from flexible crystal to solid mineral. Xanthara explained that this was a terminal condition that would result in death if the aliens remained in darkness for more than 6 Earth hours. "How long does the night cycle last on this moon?" Jake asked while trying to understand the scope of the crisis. 14 hours, Ryan replied after checking his astronomical data. "The Veltar will not survive a complete night cycle without natural light." The humans tried everything they could think of to help the dying aliens. They brought more powerful artificial lights from the ship, but these only seemed to make the crystallization process worse. They attempted to create fires using natural materials, but the Veltar's bodies rejected even this form of illumination. Dr. Hamilton worked frantically to understand the exact biological mechanisms that were causing the Veltar to freeze in darkness. Her scans revealed that their crystalline cellular structure required specific wavelengths of natural light to maintain flexibility and function. "Their cells are designed to absorb and process starlight," Lisa explained while studying the data. Artificial light sources produce different wavelengths that their bodies cannot use. In fact, the artificial light seems to interfere with their natural processes and accelerate the freezing. As the night progressed, more Veltar entered the dangerous hibernation state. The once vibrant settlement became quiet and still as the aliens struggled to survive in conditions that their biology was never designed to handle. Xanthar's communication became increasingly weak as its own body began to succumb to the crystallization process. Through fading light patterns, the alien leader explained that the Veltar had perhaps 3 more night cycles before their entire population would enter terminal hibernation. "We need to find a solution quickly," Jake said while watching the tragic transformation of the alien settlement. "These beings are dying and we may be their only hope for survival." The humans returned to their ship as the night cycle continued, knowing that they had less than 3 days to solve an impossible biological puzzle or watch an entire species fade into crystalline death. Ryan Torres stood in the ship's observatory, staring at the pale surface of the moon through the powerful telescope. The Veltar settlement below looked like a graveyard of frozen crystal statues as the aliens remained locked in their death-like hibernation state. Ryan had been awake for 18 hours trying to solve the impossible puzzle of how to provide natural light during the long night cycles. "There has to be a way to help them," Ryan muttered to himself while adjusting the telescope to get a better view of the lunar surface. The moon's terrain was covered with reflective minerals and ice deposits that caught and scattered the dim light from distant stars. Dr. Lisa Hamilton entered the observatory carrying a cup of coffee and looking exhausted from her continuous work analyzing the Veltar's biological requirements. She had been running tests for hours trying to understand exactly what type of natural light the aliens needed to survive. "Any new ideas?" Lisa asked while settling into a chair beside Ryan's workstation. "I have confirmed that they can process reflected natural light just as well as direct starlight, but the reflection must come from natural materials." Ryan suddenly stopped adjusting the telescope and stared at Lisa with growing excitement. "What did you just say about reflected natural light?" "Their bodies can use reflected starlight as long as it comes from natural sources like planetary surfaces or moons," Lisa repeated while wondering why Ryan looked so interested. "Artificial mirrors or manufactured reflective materials do not work because they change the light wavelengths in ways that the Veltar cannot process." Ryan jumped up from his chair and began pacing around the small observatory as an idea formed in his mind. He had been thinking about the problem in the wrong way by trying to create artificial light sources when the solution might involve using natural materials that already existed. "Lisa, look at this," Ryan said while pointing the telescope toward Earth's moon, which was visible in the distance. "Our moon reflects sunlight naturally using its surface minerals and dust. What if we could create something similar here using the materials available on this lunar surface?" Lisa moved to the telescope and studied the image of Earth's moon while considering Ryan's suggestion. The concept was intriguing, but the practical challenges seemed overwhelming. "You are talking about reshaping the surface of an entire moon," Lisa said, while trying to understand how such a project could be accomplished. "The amount of work involved would be enormous, and we do not have the equipment for large-scale terraforming operations." Ryan was already moving toward the ship's engineering section where he could access detailed information about their available equipment and resources. The mining tools that they carried for asteroid mineral extraction might be powerful enough to modify the lunar surface if used creatively. "We have excavation equipment designed for breaking up and moving large amounts of rock and ice," Ryan explained while pulling up technical specifications on his computer. "The machinery was designed for asteroid mining, but it could be adapted for surface modification work." Dr. Karin Stone joined them in the engineering section after hearing about Ryan's idea through the ship's communication system. Karen served as the ship's physicist and had extensive knowledge of orbital mechanics and planetary geology. "The concept is theoretically possible," Karen said after studying Ryan's preliminary calculations. "The lunar surface contains significant deposits of reflective minerals including crystalline ice and metallic compounds. If we could create large concave surfaces positioned at the correct angles, we might be able to focus reflected sunlight onto the Veltar settlement, Captain Jake. Morrison arrived just as the three scientists were beginning to work out the details of their ambitious plan. Jake had been coordinating with Commander Alex Rodriguez to maintain communication with the surviving Veltar and provide status updates on their condition. "What are you proposing?" Jake asked while reviewing the technical drawings that Ryan had sketched on his tablet computer. The diagrams showed a series of massive mirror-like surfaces carved into the lunar terrain and positioned to catch and redirect moonlight. "We want to create a natural mirror array using the moon's own surface materials," Ryan explained while pointing to specific locations on a topographical map. "By excavating and polishing strategic areas, we could create reflective surfaces that would focus natural light onto the alien settlement during the night cycles." Jake studied the proposal while considering the enormous scope of the project and the limited time they had available. The Veltar were already showing signs of terminal crystallization and could not survive much longer without a reliable source of natural light. "How long would this take to complete?" Jake asked while mentally calculating their available resources and personnel. "Working around the clock with all available equipment and crew members, we could complete the basic array in about 6 days," Ryan replied while consulting his technical specifications. "We would need to push our mining equipment beyond its normal operating limits and have everyone working extended shifts." Karen had been running calculations on her computer to determine the exact positioning and angles needed for the mirror surfaces. The mathematical requirements were complex because the reflective array needed to work effectively throughout the moon's rotation cycle. We would need to create at least 12 separate reflective surfaces positioned at specific coordinates, Karen announced while displaying her calculations on the main screen. Each mirror would need to be approximately 50 meters in diameter and polished to achieve maximum reflectivity. Lisa had been monitoring the Veltar's condition through remote sensors, and the news was not encouraging. More aliens were entering the terminal hibernation state, and their biological functions were continuing to deteriorate. "We are running out of time," Lisa reported while studying the latest medical data. "The crystallization process is accelerating, and I estimate that most of the Veltar population will be beyond recovery within 4 days." Jake made the decision to authorize the unprecedented terraforming operation despite the risks and challenges involved. The crew of the USS Endeavour would attempt to reshape the surface of an alien moon to save an entire species from extinction. "All hands prepare for extended surface operations," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. "We are going to build the largest mirror array in human history, and we have less than a week to complete the project." The crew began immediate preparations for the massive construction project. Mining equipment was adapted for surface modification. Work and personnel were organized into teams that could work continuously in shifts. Everyone understood that they were racing against time to save the Veltar from certain death. Chief Engineer Maria Santos took charge of the technical aspects of the operation while Ryan focused on the precise positioning and angles needed for each mirror surface. The work would be dangerous and exhausting, but the crew was determined to succeed. "We are going to move mountains," Ryan said while loading his equipment onto the first transport shuttle. "Or at least we are going to reshape them into something that can save lives." The lunar surface shook with violent vibrations as the mining equipment tore into the rocky terrain with mechanical fury. Ryan Torres stood at the edge of the first excavation site wearing a bulky spacesuit and watching the massive drilling. Machines carve out what would become the largest mirror in the solar system. "Keep the angle at exactly 37 degrees, Ryan shouted into his radio while directing the excavation team. "And the mathematics have to be perfect or the reflected light will not reach the Veltar settlement." Lieutenant Ben Cooper operated the primary drilling unit that was designed for asteroid mining but had been modified for surface construction work. The machine's powerful cutting beams sliced through the crystalline rock like a hot knife through butter while creating clouds of sparkling dust that drifted away in the low gravity. This equipment was not designed for continuous operation, Ben reported while monitoring the machine's temperature readings. We are pushing these systems far beyond their normal limits, and I am seeing stress fractures in the cutting assembly. Chief Engineer Maria Santos moved between the various work sites, coordinating the massive construction project while keeping track of equipment failures and crew fatigue. The human workers had been operating in 18-hour shifts for 3 days straight, and exhaustion was becoming a serious safety concern. We have lost 2 drilling units to mechanical failure, and the third one is showing signs of imminent breakdown, Maria announced over the communication network. We need to find ways to extend the operational life of our remaining equipment. Dr. Karen Stone had established a temporary command center on a ridge, overlooking the construction area where she could monitor the precise positioning of each mirror surface. The physicist was using advanced surveying equipment to ensure that every excavated depression would focus reflected moonlight exactly where it was needed. Mirror surface number 4 is off by 3 degrees, Karen announced while checking her calculations. The angle needs to be adjusted or that entire section will not contribute to the light array. The work was backbreaking and dangerous as the human crew struggled to complete the massive project within their limited time frame. The mining equipment broke down repeatedly under the constant use, and several crew members have been injured by flying debris and equipment malfunctions. Ryan had not slept in over 40 hours as he moved constantly between work sites, checking angles and supervising the polishing process. The mirror surfaces had to be perfectly smooth to achieve maximum reflectivity, and this required careful treatment of the excavated rock using specialized grinding tools. The surface texture on Mirror 7 is still too rough, Ryan reported while examining the polished stone through his helmet's magnification system. We need at least 6 more hours of grinding to achieve the reflectivity we need. Meanwhile, Dr. Lisa Hamilton continued to monitor the deteriorating condition of the Veltar through remote sensors that had been placed throughout their settlement. The aliens were showing increasingly severe signs of terminal crystallization, and time was running out rapidly. We have lost another 12 Veltar to complete hibernation, Lisa announced over the radio while reviewing the latest medical data. Their biological functions are shutting down, and I estimate that we have less than 36 hours before the damage becomes irreversible. The news provided additional motivation for the exhausted construction crew, who understood that they were literally racing against death. Captain Jake Morrison had joined the surface teams and was operating mining equipment despite his lack of technical training. I do not care if I have never used this equipment before, Jake said while learning to operate a polishing unit. Every person on this crew needs to contribute to this project if we are going to save the Veltar. The construction project had expanded beyond the original 12 mirror surfaces as Ryan realized that additional reflectors would be needed to provide sufficient light during all phases of the lunar cycle. The crew was now working on 16 separate mirror sites spread across several square kilometers of terrain. We need to add 4 more mirror surfaces to ensure continuous coverage, Ryan announced while reviewing his latest calculations. The lunar rotation will create blind spots in our coverage unless we have additional reflectors positioned at these coordinates. The additional mirrors meant more work for the already exhausted crew, but nobody complained about the extended project. The human workers had developed a personal connection to the dying Veltar and were determined to save them regardless of the cost in time and effort. Lieutenant Sarah Wells had been assigned to lead the polishing teams that were responsible for creating the mirror-smooth surfaces needed for maximum light reflection. The work required precision and patience as the crews used specialized tools to grind away imperfections in the crystalline rock. The surface quality is improving, but we need to maintain consistent pressure and movement patterns, Sarah instructed while demonstrating the proper polishing technique. Any irregularities in the surface will scatter the reflected light and reduce the effectiveness of the entire array. As the 6th day of construction began, the crew could see the end of their massive project approaching. The mirror surfaces were taking shape, and the first test reflections were showing promising results. However, equipment failures continued to plague the operation, and several critical systems were operating on backup power. We have completed 14 of the 16 planned mirror surfaces, Maria reported while conducting a comprehensive status review. The remaining 2 sites should be finished within the next 18 hours if our equipment holds together. The moment of truth arrived as the lunar day cycle ended and darkness began to fall across the alien settlement. The completed mirror surfaces were positioned to catch the first rays of reflected moonlight and focus them onto the Veltar buildings below. Ryan stood at the main observation point with his heart pounding as he watched the pale moonlight strike the polished surfaces. For the first time, the mirrors caught the natural light and redirected it in concentrated beams that illuminated the crystalline alien settlement with soft reflected starlight. "It is working," Ryan whispered into his radio while watching the beautiful sight of focused moonlight bathing the Veltar buildings. "The mirrors are reflecting the natural light exactly as we calculated." The effect on the Veltar was immediate and dramatic. The aliens who had been frozen in death-like hibernation began to stir as their crystalline bodies absorbed the reflected moonlight. Their translucent blue skin started to glow with renewed bioluminescence as their cellular functions reactivated. "The Veltar are responding," Lisa announced while monitoring their biological functions through remote sensors. "Their body temperature is stabilizing and the crystallization process is beginning to reverse." The human crew watched in amazement as the alien settlement came back to life under the glow of reflected moonlight. The moonlight mirror array had succeeded in providing the natural light that the Veltar needed to survive the long night cycles. 3 months had passed since the completion of the moonlight mirror array, and the lunar surface had been transformed into something that looked like a work of art visible from space. The 16 massive mirror surfaces created geometric patterns across the landscape that caught and redirected natural light with mathematical precision. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of the USS Endeavour watching the Veltar settlement below as it thrived under the constant glow of reflected starlight. The crystalline buildings pulsed with healthy bioluminescence, and the alien population had grown from the original 2,000 refugees to over 3,000 as new ships arrived from other parts of their dying homeworld. "The population growth has exceeded all our projections," Dr. Lisa Hamilton reported while reviewing the latest demographic data. "The Veltar are not only surviving, but they are actually flourishing in their new environment." Xanthara had become the permanent leader of the growing Veltar colony and had established formal diplomatic relations with Earth through Commander Alex Rodriguez. The alien leader had learned to communicate using a combination of light patterns and simple human language that Alex had taught during their extended contact sessions. "The Lightbringer Ryan Torres has given our people the gift of eternal life," Xanthara announced through its bioluminescent communication system during the daily status meeting. "We owe our continued existence to the creativity and determination of the human species." Ryan Torres had indeed become something of a legend among the Veltar, who had created a special designation in their culture to honor his achievement in solving their survival crisis. The title of Lightbringer was the highest honor that their species could bestow, and Ryan was the first non-Veltar to receive such recognition. "I never expected to become famous for building mirrors," Ryan said with a laugh while conducting routine maintenance on the array systems. "But I have to admit that seeing the Veltar colony thriving makes all the hard work worthwhile." The success of the mirror array had attracted attention from the scientific community throughout human space as researchers studied the innovative use of natural materials for large-scale light manipulation. Dr. Karen Stone had published several papers describing the mathematical principles behind the project and had received numerous awards for her contributions to applied physics. "We have received requests from 12 different research institutions asking for detailed technical specifications of the mirror array," Karen announced while sorting through the latest batch of correspondence. "The scientific applications of this technology could revolutionize how we approach terraforming projects." The Veltar had proven to be valuable allies for humanity as their advanced understanding of crystalline technology and light manipulation provided insights that human scientists had never considered. The aliens had helped develop new medical treatments based on light therapy and had shared knowledge about crystal growth that had applications in electronics and computer technology. The Veltar have taught us more about the therapeutic uses of natural light in the past 3 months than we learned in the previous century, Lisa explained while demonstrating a new medical scanner that incorporated Veltar biotechnology. Their understanding of how different wavelengths affect biological systems is incredibly advanced. Chief Engineer Maria Santos had worked closely with Veltar technicians to expand and improve the mirror array system. The aliens had contributed their expertise in crystal formation to create self-maintaining reflective surfaces that would continue to function for decades without human intervention. The new crystalline coating that the Veltar developed will protect the mirror surfaces from meteor impacts and thermal stress, Maria reported while inspecting the enhanced reflectors. This technology could be applied to space-based solar collectors and communication arrays throughout human space. The collaboration between humans and Veltar had also led to the establishment of the Joint Research Station where both species worked together to solve problems that neither could address alone. The facility had become a model for interspecies cooperation and had attracted delegations from other alien civilizations seeking similar partnerships. Lieutenant Ben Cooper had been promoted to head of engineering for the research station after his excellent work during the mirror array construction project. He had developed new techniques for working with crystalline materials and had helped train both human and Veltar engineers in advanced construction methods. We are currently working on plans for 3 additional mirror arrays on other moons in this system, Ben announced while reviewing blueprints for expanded Veltar settlements. The success of this project has proven that we can create habitable environments for light-dependent species throughout the galaxy. Captain Morrison had received official recognition from Earth Command for his role in saving the Veltar civilization and establishing humanity's first successful long-term alien alliance. The mission logs from the USS Endeavour had become required reading at the Space Academy, where future officers studied the importance of creative problem-solving and interspecies cooperation. This mission has changed how humanity approaches first contact situations, Jake reflected while reviewing reports from other exploration vessels. We have learned that sometimes the greatest discoveries come not from what we find, but from what we choose to build. The Moonlight Mirror Array continued to operate flawlessly as the lunar cycles brought regular periods of darkness and light to the alien settlement. The Veltar had adapted their daily activities to work with the natural rhythms of their new home while maintaining their unique culture and traditions. Dr. Hamilton had established a permanent research position with the Veltar colony to continue studying their biology and developing new applications for light-based medical treatments. Her work had already led to breakthrough therapies for human conditions related to seasonal depression and vitamin deficiency. The Veltar have taught us that light is not just illumination, but a fundamental life force that affects every aspect of biological function, Lisa explained while conducting her latest experiments. Understanding their light-based biology has opened up entirely new fields of medical research. Commander Rodriguez had been appointed as the permanent Earth ambassador to the Veltar colony and had helped negotiate several important treaties that established trade relationships and cultural exchange programs. The aliens had begun teaching their light-based communication system to human students. While learning about human art and music, the cultural exchange between our species has enriched both civilizations, Alex reported while hosting a delegation of Veltar artists who were creating beautiful light sculptures for display on Earth. We are learning that cooperation between different species can produce achievements that neither could accomplish alone. The story of the Moonlight Mirror Array had spread throughout human space as an example of what could be accomplished when people refused to accept the impossible. The project had saved an entire alien civilization and had established the foundation for a partnership that would benefit both species for generations to come. As new ships arrived carrying other refugee species seeking help from the humans and Veltar, the Mirror Array stood as a beacon of hope across the galaxy. The message was clear that when faced with extinction one species had found salvation through the creativity and determination of another.